welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
This is Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Jody, and today I have with us, please introduce yourself to everyone.
I am GT Karber. I'm the creator of MURDLE and just a person.
Yes, you are a person. I can see him in front of my face.
I'm right here.
That's awesome. So can you just start with a little description of MURDLE to get us going?
Okay, so MURDLE is a collection of murder mystery logic puzzles that anyone can learn to solve. So you have a little mystery, there's a body, and then you have a set of suspects, weapons, and locations, and you have to figure out which suspect had which weapon and where, and then of those sets, which of them committed the crime. And each one takes, like, I don't know, depending on how experienced you are, 5 to 15 minutes. And it's sort of a once you pop, you don't stop situation,
It's
which
true.
I stole from Pringles. Pringles, please don't sue.
Oh, please don't do that. That would be horrible. Today's puzzle took me about 6.5 minutes on Myrtle.com. Everyone should check that out.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad, right? So let's get into a little bit of your past. When did your love of puzzles and stuff start? What was that like?
You know, I think that to me, Myrtle stretches back to like a love of when I was a kid, Encyclopedia Brown. I think that is he was like the GOAT to me. And I
Yeah.
think he's like a great sort of precocious kid's hero. And interestingly enough, Encyclopedia Brown didn't go global.
No.
Like there's not in the UK, he's totally unknown. Nobody has any awareness of Encyclopedia Brown. Whereas like Columbo's international.
Yeah,
So when I
totally.
bring up Columbo, who I also love, everybody knows him. But Encyclopedia Brown is unknown. I don't know why I'm like so obsessed with that fact. I think it has something to do with like the precocious American, like,
Yeah,
he's a child who's better than all the adults. And in Europe, they're like, how could a child be better than an adult? Like
exactly.
they're
How dare
very.
he?
But I also really love these like lateral thinking puzzle books. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but there'd be like some sort of statement that we used to do them in school, and like teacher would read the statement,
Yeah.
and it would have be like sort of mysterious, and then you'd ask yes or no questions to try to figure out like what was going on. So it's hard for me to think of a great example right off the top of my head, but they would basically play on some sort of ambiguity in the phrasing or the language that, like, as a group, you would have to like figure out. And I always really loved like little puzzles that had some kind of like narrative to them or had some kind
Yes.
of like, interactive element there or story element rather than just being like Sudoku or like even a
Yes.
crossword, I really
Yeah.
like like, to me, I'm always very interested in like the intersection of like math and language
Mm.
and how those, like a Myrtle is a very logical puzzle. It's,
Yes.
you can translate them into every language. I think we're in 30 languages now.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Whereas like a word puzzle, like crosswords can't really be translated
No.
because of but Myrtle is also like very narrative and very, there's characters. So it's
It's
kind
a
of
great storyline.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you. I love that. Yeah, and I think that to me is really exciting that it both is logical and has that sort of creative, story element.
Yeah, that's great. I used to listen or read to myself, really, the 5-minute mysteries where you try to figure it out, then flip the book over, or
Mhm.
even like Alfred Hitchcock had like older versions I would find in the library, and you try to solve the murder. And I was like, this is fun. And I wouldn't always get
I
it, but it
love
was
all of that.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that for Encyclopedia Brown or like and Donald J. Sobel did everybody there's a whole different series of like how many minute mysteries. So there's like
Yes.
there's from H.A. Ripley wrote in like the 20s or the teens maybe like the
Wow.
1 minute mysteries or detectograms as he called them. And then Donald J. Sobel, who did Encyclopedia Brown, also did 2 minute mysteries.
Yeah, it's so
And then there's
funny.
also 5 minute mysteries, and I loved all of those, but I don't think that I ever once like tried to figure it out. Like I'm trying to recall my Encyclopedia Brown reading, and I would get to the end of that story and just turn and flip it over and be like, yeah, he figured it out.
Yeah,
I
I would
think,
take like less than a second to try to figure it out, and I'm
yeah,
like, I need to know the answer.
give up. Yeah, I want to hear the answer. Yeah.
Tell me now.
And with Myrtle, you can't really, I mean, you could do that, but it's not as like it's
Yeah.
not about like finding something in the story that you missed. It's that like activity that you're sort of doing. So I
Yeah.
think you kind of like people have to interact with it in a way rather
Oh
than just
yeah.
flip to the back.
For my Myrtles now, I even write on the grid itself just to like help my eyes a little bit more
Yeah.
than flipping, and I cross things out and I write things in the margins now, and I'm like, I'm a detective. All
Yeah,
right.
I mean the whole thing from the beginning was like I want it to be a book that people like destroy, that you
Yeah.
scribble all over. And sometimes people come to signings and they have a book and they're like almost apologetic to ask me to sign it because the book is like totally wrecked. And it makes me think I went to Catholic school, and
Oh,
in
yes.
Catholic school there would always be a thing where like when you're like not very religious, you always try to keep your Bible really pristine and
Yes.
like untouched, and the nuns are always like it's a really good sign if your Bible's like wrecked. That means that
You've
you
been
like
through it.
yeah, you're like reading the Bible. And I was a wild analogy to talk about the Bible compared to Myrtle, but I always really appreciate people are always embarrassed that it's messed up, but I'm always like, no, this is like a huge honor. You like
Yeah.
this like means something to you.
I love my books. But yeah. So when Myrtle came about, I know I've read things that you wrote like a Myrtle mystery on a napkin for a friend. Like, were you
Yeah.
thinking of Myrtle in your head, always like tinkering with it, or did it just like boom, napkin, done?
I decided in 2021 that I would really try to buckle down and focus on the very specific genre of, you can solve it mysteries, what they used to call
Mhm.
fair play mysteries. And I I've really sort of tried to like redo my whole creative life around this idea. So I grew a mustache because I thought that was very
It's
mysterious.
very mysterious.
Thank you, thank you. And I came up with a whole list of like small little interactive mysteries. So I have some short stories that I wrote, and I had some various different kinds of games that are not as gamey as Myrtle, but that it involved some aspect of you figuring out a puzzle. And so so my plan was in at the beginning of I think 2022, maybe 21. I'm all bamboozled now. Like I was gonna do one murder mystery every week, and
Oh wow.
I was gonna call it Murder Mystery Mondays,
Oh, I
and
like
every
that.
Monday I was gonna release a new murder mystery, and then I immediately got COVID at the
Oh
very beginning,
gosh.
and so I didn't do the first one, and so the whole concept of doing one every week kind of like went out the because I was like, there's the whole point was there's the whole year I was gonna do 50 of them.
Right?
And so it got pushed like a month or two. And in that time, I had made a Myrtle for a friend of mine, not really thinking about it as like, oh, this could be another one of the like mysteries that I release. Like, but just sort of only kind of thinking and doing that, only thinking about mysteries and stuff. And he really liked it though, the one that I made, but there was a mistake in the napkin. I made him like
Mm.
a one Myrtle on a napkin, and he was like, "There's two solutions here." So I went home and
Oh,
coded some software to like come up with the right answer, and because I thought it would be great to have like a button that I could create a logic puzzle with. And I always love little tinkering with code and stuff. It's so much fun. And
is that how Moriarty started?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was sort of the origin of that. And which I also sketched out on like a notebook at a Himalayan restaurant I liked. And then I had it working. It's like he
Wow.
made a puzzle for him, but it was just like text, no real, none of the like fun and the flair of Myrtle. But he really liked that, and so I kept tinkering with it. And then when all of those sort of like, Wordle-like daily games were coming out, it's sort of the idea that the name came to me,
Yeah.
and the concept of making it a daily thing. So originally it was called something like Deductive Logico's Multicolored Murder Mysteries or something like that. It had this real mouthful of a working title.
That's exactly how it is if you don't use the word
Yeah,
Myrtle.
yeah, right, right. And
Just
then so I it was originally going to be like a 5 or 6 puzzle arc that you played like in one sitting.
mm.
Like that was my initial conception of it. And then when all of these daily games blew up, it just became so clear that it would be just such a wonderful like daily activity game.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the origin of the like way people play it now of like the daily. I'm being a little muddled in my narrative. I was up late last night working on next Christmas's Merry Myrtle, which is the Christmas themed Myrtle. Not to
Yes.
tangent, but I'm a little sleepy because I stayed up very late
No worries.
working
I
on
saw
it.
that's coming out in October.
I'm very excited. Although I'm like also stressed because you have to write them. That's the that's
Yes.
the terrible part about books is that they have to be written.
Yeah. So we could talk a little bit about that too. You do the Myrtle series, which is for almost everybody, but then you have the Myrtle Junior. So how does your process change? Did you have to like tinker again with the algorithm to make them slightly easier? Do you keep them at the same level because kids can solve things? Like, what's that process like?
I don't know necessarily that I made all of the choices from a very sort of like rational, elevated perspective. I do everything kind of intuitively.
Nice.
And with Mary Myrtle, I didn't really use the same algorithm that I used for the big Myrtle puzzles,
Okay.
because for the easier ones, so with Mary, with I'm so sorry, I said Mary Myrtle, I think. Maybe I didn't.
Yeah. Oh, you meant
I'm
Myrtle
confused.
Junior.
I meant Myrtle Jr.
No
Yeah,
worries. Okay.
with Myrtle Jr., they start simpler. And there's now on myrtlejr.com, you can do a little square Myrtle that's very simple. But for the book, I mostly just like typed them.
Oh,
Whereas with the
nice.
Myrtle, when they like get when there's like motives and there's weapons and locations and suspects, and I want to have clues about like their hair color and their eye color and indoors, outdoors, it's like way easier to run those through an algorithm that I've
Right.
typed all of the information into and then let it kind of spit out, and I can hit refresh and get like, go through 20, 30 puzzles till I find one I like. But with the kids one, I was I was concerned about a couple of things that I thought needed to change. One was that I wanted the cases not to be all murders.
Right.
Like initially I was like, oh, there'll be no murders. They're like, who stole the pie? They'll be like, neighborhood
Yeah.
mysteries. And all of the kid-lit editors were like, no, 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 no. Kids want to solve a murder. They want to solve like a huge, world-spanning, life or death case. They don't want to solve who found, who stole the pie. And
They
but
do.
it is a little depressing to like to the problem with murder mysteries for children is that there's no real fixing it. You know,
Yeah.
like at the end the person is still dead and you can jail someone, but it doesn't really like there's no like restitution.
Yeah, it's true.
And we kind of thought that that would be like a little like unsettling or upsetting for a kid to go through, 40 murders, just littered with corpses. So
Thank
there are a lot
goodness.
there are a lot more like narrative, the kids ones. So sometimes like a character is like trying to pick a lock and you have to figure out like which key to use and which way to turn it. Sort
Yeah,
of
that's
like there's
fun.
various different kind of logical things you have to do where it's the same basic structure, but I kind of in a lot of ways they're more creative. In some ways, I think that actually ended up making them harder because some of the Myrtle Juniors are like it's like confusing in a way that like suspect weapon location is not. Like suspect weapon location is such an easy thing to wrap your head around.
Yeah, every day you deal with the same thing.
Yeah, but in the
Yeah.
kids one, sometimes it's like the motive and the means and like
Mm,
there's sometimes it's just very complicated. But one of the things that I thought for kids, and I think that this is true, I think I was right about this, is that a lot of the adults who do Myrtles do like one a day, or they do it before night, or they do it with like
right.
a partner or friend, and so the books are kind of designed like that. You get a full experience with one
Mhm.
puzzle. You can set it down. You can go on with your life. But the kids ones, I kind of felt like thinking about when I was a kid, like I never did something like once a day. I was either like
Yeah.
100% in it or I didn't think about it at all. So the kids book is designed to kind of be like burned through,
Nice.
and so the story it all connects, and every puzzle's not necessarily like a fully satisfying puzzle on its own. It's more like a chapter in a book. And that was really exciting to do because it was just fun to kind of like test a different muscle. And I'll
Definitely.
tell you what, writing the first Myrtle I outlined like all together. And then I had to sit down and make the 100 puzzles or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought while I was doing it, I was like, oh, wow, it's really hard to tell a story through 100 consecutive murders
Yeah.
because I want to have a thing where it's like, oh, Logico goes and he gets this clue from this, it's a parking garage. It's like a Nixon thing. It's like a shadows and and then I'm like, oh, but somebody has to be murdered.
Yeah.
It's
Every
like
single time.
there's no there's no plot beat that can happen that doesn't also involve a murder. And that's like creatively kind of hard to sustain, you know?
Yeah.
So that was a fun thing to get away from in the books, from the kids' books. Not as many murders, more of a through line. I feel
That's
like
amazing.
I hope that I answered that question. I can't
I
even
think
remember
so.
where we started.
I just asked what was the difference in the process, so I think you
Oh,
got
great,
it.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful.
correct. So yeah, now that it's in Myrtle Junior, we have a Myrtle board game. I have that. That is wonderful. Is there also going to be a card game, or is that morphed into just the board game?
No, there should be a card game. We haven't 100% decided the schedule for that. We have a game that we've kicked around that's more of a like fun, quick dealing sort of game that won't involve the logic grids, but that'll
Ah,
involve like just the characters and suspects and stuff.
that sounds fun.
Uh,
And then even
yeah.
like your tarot deck, your marrow deck, that's
Yes,
going to be a real
yes.
thing too.
Yes, that's where I'm hoping to announce that very soon. Yeah, yeah,
That's
officially. But
exciting.
that's been one of the things. You see, so to me, okay, so this is a weird thing to say because I'm a very logically minded person. I'm a rationalist. I'm an empiricist. I think you should test your theories. But I also creatively am very sort of I am a believer in like the magic of art, and I
Yeah,
think that it's real. I think that one of the things that I very consciously tried to do was to make Myrtle a like a manifestation of some things. So there's a lot of stuff in the first Myrtle that I'm like trying to bring into reality by putting it in the book.
that's great.
So I have this sort of theory of like magic and art, which is that there's a movie, and I used to be able to reference this as a recent film, and now I think it's like a decade old. So this is embarrassing. But the Jason Segel Muppets movie, I think is like a magic working. I
It
don't know if
is
you.
anything Muppets is magical.
I
So
love I love
yes.
well, I agree with you because to me I think a crucial aspect of like a magic work is this sort of meta aspect where the line between the fictional world and our world is blurred. And if that line is sufficiently blurred, then stuff from the fictional world can kind of step into the real world. And so what I love about that Jason Segel Muppets movie is that like the Muppets start out in that movie like has-beens, and at
Yeah.
the end of the plot of the film, they're famous again. And so there was a period for like 5 years after that movie came out where the Muppets were like full on A-list stars again.
Oh yeah. Remember
They had like an ABC show, they had a
that was the greatest
sequel.
show.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it did not last long.
I know it's so unfortunate.
But like, and I think that so with Myrtle I tried to do that. I tried to like put stuff in. So it's like Logico gets like a book deal, and then the book is released and they're gonna adapt it into Hollywood. And I was like, that would be great. And I was like, oh, they should have, the marrow is like a thing in the book, and then maybe we could do cards in the future. And like I tried to basically put into the book things that I thought would be fun to exist like in the real world. And like we're
Yeah,
actually getting to the point now where it's like we've kind of like
happening.
done them all. Like it's sort of wild. Like
Your first Myrtle book was kind of like a vision board.
no, I believe that. I think that there's something to that. I think that if you are an artist or whatever and you want to like make a difference in the world, you want to make a change in the people who read your book, you have to model. I think this is key to art. You have to
Mm.
model the arc of a character has to be the arc that you want the reader to go through. And if you can blur those lines between the character and the reader, between the arc of the character and the arc of the reader, the arc of the character and the arc of the whole piece, I think that you actually can transform people. If you have a character who goes from being, I mean, one of the great works of literature is A Christmas Carol, and of course, The
Hmm.
Muppet Christmas Carol being the best adaptation of it.
Completely agree.
But it's this thing of like you watch Scrooge, like become a good guy over the course of the night. And if the movie works, which of course it does in A Muppet Christmas Carol, you are kind of like you're also less Scroogey at the end of it. You know, you come out of it with like a lightness in your step, and
Oh
you know
yeah.
you want to keep Christmas in your heart all the years.
I'm still singing those songs a month
They're
later.
great.
Oh
They're
yeah.
great. And I think that that's like fundamental to art. And I think sometimes people don't consciously think about that. And I definitely did Making Myrtle, which is a kind of a wild thing to say. But
That's
I
amazing.
I think that like it feels like it worked more than anything I've ever done in my life has worked. So I'm just trying to like take lessons from it that I can and apply them to other things.
Amazing. I never thought talking to Mr. Myrtle, as I call you, would lead into the Muppets. So this is amazing.
The Muppets are huge for me. The Muppets are
Ah,
huge for me.
they're a big part of my heart.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, they're all great. It's a great cast of characters. I think
Yeah.
that I love the way in which the Muppets reality functions, where like
Mm.
Kermit like can go to the bank, you know,
Yeah,
and sometimes they'll be like, we don't let frogs open bank accounts, but like they do talk to frogs, you know, like
exactly.
the world of the Muppets, I think, is a very like everybody sort of accepts it.
Yeah. Wish I lived
Yeah,
in that world completely.
it's great.
Nice. So if we could just take a small departure, can you tell us about like your new puzzle books that are going to be coming out called Bordergrams?
Yeah, so
I'm interested.
Bordergrams is coming out this like fall, late summer maybe. And Bordergrams is a word puzzle. So in it you're given a collection of basically spy missions that you're sent on to divide up regions into territories. And the way that you do this is you're given a map that has a bunch of districts on it with words on them, and you have to circle the common groups. So it's
Hmm.
basically like one of those, word connection puzzles. Like the Times does one, and there's a game show in the UK called Only Connect that does it.
Excellent.
And but it has this added aspect of having these really interesting maps and a narrative, and you basically have joined a spy organization, and they're sending you on these missions to carve up territories, and you start to wonder if what you're doing is right, and if maybe the bad guys are the good guys. And so I'm trying to kind of take the lessons that I have from Myrtle and apply them to this new thing and a new puzzle. But more importantly, I like Bordergrams is great because I it's like all my friends are writing it with me.
That's great.
And so my longtime partner, girlfriend, Danny, has done all of the maps for it, and they're just unbelievably beautiful. And one of my longtime writing partners, Amin Osman, helped with the story. And
Wow.
then my friend Dan, who I made the first Myrtle puzzle for, he designed a lot of the word puzzles for this book.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a real fun thing to go from like working alone on a deadline that I was stressed on by myself to then having like a team of like my friends working on a puzzle book. And to me, that was one of my like favorite things that has come about from Myrtle is the like that I could now like put together a book with my friends and we could write it and put it
That's
out to the
really
world.
exciting. Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that one, something different. Usually word
Yeah.
games intimidate me a little bit because my
Mhm.
spelling isn't that great, but then I just keep trying and I love connections from the
Mhm,
New York
mhm.
Times, so that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I think that I hope that it's good, and I've always tried to make it very accessible. You know, it's harder with word puzzles because there are, it's hard to find a word that everybody knows.
True.
Everybody brings their own experiences, their own vocabulary to it. And we've tried to make a puzzle that's very accessible to a wide swath of people, but then
Mm.
also make something that gets harder and harder as the book goes. And it's a tough balance to strike. Whereas with Myrtle, since it's all logical, really the size of the puzzle is the big determining factor, and I can
That's true.
very easily scale that up or down. Whereas with these word puzzles, it's hard to think about like what makes a category hard. Is it, you know, individual knowledge of the topic? You could do a connection category that was like it, cities in Spain.
Yeah.
And if you're Spanish, it'd be trivial for you. But if you're not,
Mm.
you know,
It was a hard one
and
last week like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes, too, they feel unfair or they feel like, A huge thing is that words are fuzzy and the concepts around them are fuzzy. And often when you have four words in a category, there's one that kind of doesn't fully fit. And it's
Mm,
always this sort of constant debate over whether, does this word fit the category? Is this too esoteric?
that's
And
right.
I honestly think it's a kind of thing, word puzzle wise, that I couldn't have done all alone because being able to bounce, does everybody know this word off of
Right.
three other people is huge.
That is big.
And I'm very excited for that. And I want to do some other puzzle books too that we're kicking around. And hopefully next year I'll have, two or three
Awesome.
different ones as well. Yeah. I can't tell
Yeah,
you about those though, because they might not
that's okay. Hey,
happen.
I'm looking forward to anything in the future because I know there's a new Myrtle Junior coming. There's another Myrtle, A Case of the Seven Skulls coming, and you mentioned Merry Myrtle. That's all this year. Is there going to be a TV show or a movie? I saw some things like that.
Legendary, the studio behind Dune and the Godzilla movies, has
Wow.
has acquired the rights to Myrtle, and now they're shopping it to streamers and networks. And
Wow.
I can't really say anything more than that, but and everybody always tells me like, don't get your hopes up for the adaptation. Like that's the word for everybody that like it's very hard to get anything made.
True.
But I learned this great piece of advice or like Hollywood wisdom from an agent years and years ago. And he said that the big motivating force in Hollywood is fear of being fired. And all of the executives make all of the decisions based on not wanting to do something that could get them fired. And if you really stick your neck out and you risk it all on a movie, and then that movie bombs and you can't justify your decision, you get fired. And I think Myrtle is something that nobody's going to get fired over. It's a
No.
pre-existing IP, it's a genre that people like. It's
There's a
a
fan base out there for it,
there's a
that's for
fan
sure.
base out there.
I'm on the
So,
Discord, I'm on the Reddit.
oh, great.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to solicit moderators for both of those. So
Very
if you
nice.
want to be more involved, just reach
Oh,
out.
thanks. I did find an old post from 2023 from the old Twitters that when the strike's over, we should have a Myrtle movie, right? And you had three demands. So the one about playing the inspector, you want someone hot. Do you
Yeah.
have a wish list?
Yeah, yeah. I don't look, I don't publicly say names for people
Good enough.
because I don't want to, like get people's hopes up, and I also don't want to
Right.
like make the actor whose name I didn't give be,
Oh, yeah.
who's ultimately cast. Like I don't want
But in your head, do you have like the ultimate people that you wish, and then if it comes out, it comes out?
I have some people that I like, but frankly, I've never been very good at, casting kind of thing. My
Mm.
friend Amin, who's working on Bordergrams, is like great at that. He can, list off five actors who would be great for any role. And I'm kind of like, I'll be very happy with whoever we get. But yeah, I love my demands, and
Those
they
were good.
agreed to my demands.
Oh, the
They
audience, we get to solve the mystery?
Yeah, you'll get to solve the mystery along
Yes.
with the characters. Iratino will be played by someone indisputably hot. And the third one, which is that there's a series of mysterious incidents which lead to rumors that the production is cursed. Yeah.
Oh, that's
The
great.
producer of it, this wonderful, brilliant woman named Jessica Rhodes, said to me that that would be easy to do because they took a group of British actors to the Canadian wilderness to film the next season of Black Mirror,
Oh boy.
and they all kept getting injured in the woods because
Yeah.
she's like, these British actors,
It's Canada. It's
they're
crazy.
not equipped for the Canadian wilderness. And so she's like, all we have to do to fulfill that third demand is to just fly some of the performers to Canada.
Yes,
I was like,
definitely. Get them
yes.
lost up in Saskatchewan or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. This is awesome. So before we wrap this up and say goodbye, is there anything else you want to talk about, Myrtle? You want to plug anything, tell us to get excited for, or just
Yeah.
anything?
No, one thing that I'm really hoping for this year is one of the parts of the books is that Logico is in the detective club, and this is sort of a social gathering space. And in the first Myrtle Jr. novel, which is coming out, that I'm very excited about, and it's written by the author who wrote Mr. Limoncello's library.
Chris
Yeah,
Gravinston. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And he's so smart, and he's the president of the Mystery Writers of America this last year,
Oh, that's right.
which I just feel like overwhelmingly honored to be, that I'm working with him on this book. But in that book, it shows these kids forming their own branch of the detective club to solve this mystery. And
Great.
I think a big goal of my year this year is to try and organize the Myrtle fans into their own branches of a detective club
Let's
and
go.
then empower them to go out and solve mysteries in their communities, in their neighborhoods, or for the adults in their workplace. I mean, who keeps stealing, your lunch from the refrigerator?
That
Like,
happened to me last week.
yeah, put a
Let's
group
go.
together, get on it. So that's my big goal. And if people sign up on the email list online, they would be, first to be mentioned for that. So that's my big plan that we haven't talked about.
That's awesome. That's great plans too. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you
My
for
name is
having me.
Oh, you're
Oh,
so
I'm so
welcome.
sorry. I
No,
talked
no,
right
you
over
are
you.
so welcome. My name is Jody. This was the Syosset Library Podcast, Turn the Page. My guest today was GT Karber, and we're going to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Thanks.
Woohoo! Thank you.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.